Hello and welcome to Succeeding with Your PhD. I'm Dr. Alex Goddard. I'm head of the Doctoral College at the University of Leicester, and I'm joined by Katie and Charlotte. So I'll hand over to Katie to introduce herself first.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Bunning. I'm a researcher and lecturer in Museum Studies, the School of Museum Studies. And I'm very happy to be here, kind of representing the supervisor's perspective on this, on embarking on your PhD. Charlotte.
Hi everyone, my name's Charlotte. I'm a PhD student here at the University of Leicester, just starting my 4th year of my PhD. I'm based in the Department of Cardiovascular Sciences, and I'm looking forward to kind of this year finishing up my PhD, and I'm here representing a student perspective on starting your PhD and kind of top tips and anything else that you might want to know from a student perspective.
Thank you both. So what we're going to talk through in this session is the perks of being a student, some useful apps that you'll need to be aware of, getting you started on some of the jargon that we use to help you navigate the university, and then some tips, particularly from Katie and Charlotte, on getting started. So we're going to go straight into perks. So you're still considered a student, albeit being a postgraduate research student. So some of the perks are that you're represented by the Students' Union with a postgraduate student officer, just like other undergraduates and taught masters have officers. There is a postgraduate research student society supported by the Students' Union, and there's also some dedicated space around campus, including a reading room, the Doctoral College reading room in the library, and you also have access to staff and research and postgraduate spaces, such as on the first floor of the Charles Wilson building. One of the other perks is that you have complete freedom to explore a topic of interest for 4 years full-time or 7 years part-time. And so this is great freedom to just dive into a topic and enjoy it. Now, whilst you're a full-time student, you get benefits that other full-time students get, such as the council tax discounts. Any students will get the discounts such as the NUS Extra. You can also qualify for bus ticket and travel discounts and free prescriptions, and alongside all the other benefits that being a student can attract. Now, on the University of Leicester, we use a variety of apps, both on the computer or on mobile devices, to help you navigate your studies as well as the campus. One of these is the MyUOL app, where you can get university news and updates, access to OneDrive, providing feedback, finding study locations, sorting out library searches and loans, and accessing the Twitter feeds of the University and Students' Union. To help you navigate, it also includes a campus map, and it works without Wi-Fi. The University of Leicester uses the EduRoam Wi-Fi, so when you're first on campus, you can connect to this by using the Set Up University of Leicester Wi-Fi network on your phone and follow the instructions there. This will work all across the university in any university-affiliated building. And what's important to remember is that your university email address that you will get will be at leicester.ac.uk. There is no at student, it is straight at leicester.ac.uk, and you must use the at Leicester info when you're logging on to different platforms and the Wi-Fi and other bits like that.
I just wanted to add as well that EduRoam is also available at the universities around the world. So actually, if you're attending an international conference and presenting work as a PhD student, you also will have access to Wi-Fi typically at those institutions as well, which is really helpful and is something to be aware of in advance, maybe of thinking about those conferences.
Yes, thank you. That's brilliant. The university has catering opportunities on campus, and you can find out a lot of these through the link that's on this page, which is yourlsp.com. And there is a central app that can also give you loyalty points, discounts, promotions, and you can also advance purchase your food for various points throughout the day. And you can also preload this and use it to pay for your food rather than using other payment methods. Now, alongside this, be aware that the University of Leicester is a cashless campus. So if you are paying for food, you will need to use a digital payment method, either this app, bank cards, smartwatches, and phones or similar. Now, we're going to go through some of the jargon to help you navigate and understand some of the terms that might be thrown at you either in the current state of you in pre-arrival status or shortly after you register and arrive. Now, the first one is that most postgraduate research students are called PGRs, which is for postgraduate research student. And this is because it includes a variety of degrees, including PhD, MD, TClin Sci, DSOC Sci, and MPhil researchers that are with us. I'm from the doctoral college, as I said, and this is quite often referred to as the DC. So if someone says, go and see the DC, then you'll be looking for my team to help and support you. We have 4 colleges at the University of Leicester. These are the main academic bodies of which the schools and departments are all part of. So we have the College of Science and Engineering, which is known as CSE, College of Social Science, Arts and Humanities, that's known as CASAR, and the College of Life Sciences, that's known as CLS, and the College of Business is fairly new and is currently still known as ULSB. So if you're told to go and see your college or that you're part of a college thing, it will quite often be described by that acronym. And a lot of the schools and departments within those colleges also work with acronyms, and we'll go through some of these as part of your induction process as well. The other one to be aware of is my PGR, which is going to be thrown at you probably quite early on. And this is the PGR management portal. So you can access this as a platform to manage your record, your journey, your supervisory meetings, and lots of other things, as well as booking training. And a lot more details about this will be provided to you at one of the welcomes, as well as part of your registration. You'll also be invited or attending sessions in a variety of buildings, and they also go by a code. So CW is the Charles Wilson building centrally on campus, and that's close by to the FJB, the Fielding Johnson. The GDC, the George Davis Centre, is just on the top of the Lancaster Road and is a research centre used by life sciences predominantly, but have lots of sessions in there. The Sir Bob Burgess building is on Freeman's Common, and that is close to the car park and has lots of large lectures and sessions within it. The David Wilson Library is known as DWL on a lot of maps and shortened versions, and this has a lot of the study space that was mentioned before. The MSB is the Morris Shop building just at the bottom of Mayor's Walk on University Road, and just tucked behind that is the Henry Wellcome building, HWB. Some of your induction events might be held in some of these buildings or other ones, but if you're unsure, just ask and we can always help. Now, in the UK, room numbers aren't always the same as elsewhere across the globe. So if the room that you're meant to be attending starts with a 0, this indicates the ground floor, which for most buildings is the floor of the main entrance. Floor 1 is indicated by a number 1. So if you were in room 1.02, you would be on the first floor in room 102. Negative numbers, if you come across these, indicate basement level, so these are below the ground floor. Okay, so I hope that jargon helped just understand some of the terms that might be thrown at you as you get started. And if you're ever in doubt and don't understand, do ask and we will help you wherever we can. So now I'm going on to the bit that you're probably most interested in, which is the tips around getting started. And I'm going to kick this off and then hand over to the colleagues on the call. So the first thing to be aware of, in the first week, there will be a variety of inductions and welcome sessions for you. If you are due to register in September, you should already have been invited to the Doctoral College or the University-wide Postgraduate Researcher Welcome that's on Monday, the 23rd of September in the afternoon. And this will provide quite a bit more detail and context to some of the terms that I've thrown at you in this presentation and help with your orientation. You'll also have a college induction led by your college PGR lead, they're called a PGR director, and your school and department will also provide a local induction for you to help you understand the school and department processes. As part of this, it helps you start to get familiar with campus. We will also be providing a campus tour to help you understand where different buildings and sites are on campus. And so do get familiar with the campus and your own research base. And through all of these opportunities, including others such as the training and as well as the PGR representatives, speak and talk with colleagues, start to form those bonds, and they're always there to help you. And on the back of that, I'm going to pass over to Katie, because one of our first tips is also to always meet with your supervisor and ask for their top tips.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so I'd like to just take a few moments to talk about what to expect at the first meeting with your supervisor. So as Alex says, it's really important to sort of get to know your supervisor from the start. It's a great opportunity when you come into your first supervision to just to simply do that, just to get to know each other. You could be asking them how best they like to supervise, what they enjoy about the supervision role. Do they have memories of when they started their PhD, for example, just to kind of humanise the experience and give you a little bit of a starting point. But the subjects that you'll be talking about are quite wide-ranging, probably in your first couple of supervisions. It's a good idea to mention any particular kind of requirements, challenges, concerns, questions that you have at the outset. And there's no kind of silly questions at this stage. You're not expected to come in being an expert in anything at this stage. So please do ask the questions that you might have. And really, it's about building the relationship so that you can work effectively together with your supervisor and you can get the support that you need to succeed in your PhD. It's also an opportunity to start getting to know the supervisor's style a little bit. So I actually did my PhD at Leicester a few years ago now, and I had two supervisors. They had very, very different styles. So I had one supervisor who was very relaxed and quite flexible in terms of when I was going to complete certain tasks and things like that. I also had a second a kind of co-supervisor who was very strict on when I was going to complete certain tasks, and she was much more kind of project focused and task oriented. And I have to say, I kind of needed the very project-oriented supervisor to get me through. I had two young kids under 5 during my PhD, and I was a distance learning PhD, so it can be done. But there was, certainly a need for me to have those quite concrete deadlines. But I have to say, I probably enjoyed the supervision with the more relaxed supervisor more. So, it's just to say there are different styles. You'll be getting to know those different styles, and there's not going to be any one size fits all. But essentially, I also just wanted to talk about what you'll be doing in the first supervision around setting expectations. So having a really explicit conversation about who's going to sort of set up the supervision meetings, what to do if you need to cancel them, what the first tasks are going to be, and when they have to be delivered by ahead of your supervision, just having a really explicit conversation about writing up the notes from the meeting in the PGR, my PGR system, is a really good idea. So there's no sort of sense of who's doing what and confusions there. It's also an important opportunity to start talking about the research experiences that you may have had before joining, and to be able to identify the kinds of training needs that you might have. So again, right at the start, there'll be lots of training opportunities, lots of sessions, as Alex mentioned. So yeah, just having that conversation at the start could be really, really helpful as well. essentially supervisions are there to kind of try and help break down the PhD into chunks or tasks. So I think one of the things you'll probably find is that you're going to be set a first task at your first supervision, hopefully, or you know, perhaps in your second supervision, but quite early on, so that you can have a small but defined task to start you off with your research. Often it's reviewing some kind of literature or you know, reviewing some kind of work to get you started. Overall, I just wanted to, just to kind of underscore the role of admin in the PhD experience. So by this, I mean, yes, you'll be here researching, but you'll also be here managing a project. In most cases, the PhD student is the manager of the project, the research project. And managing a project and also getting the support from supervisors requires project management skills. You know, these are skills you may already bring. You may need to develop more in this area, but being really aware of the need to keep on top of the administrative side of your PhD, keep in good touch with your school, with your supervisor, but also making sure that you're completing the forms on the My PGR system as well at the right points. So you'll see, you know, as you get started, you'll see that there's a, you know, this big expanse of time soon breaks down into some manageable chunks. So I wanted to pass to Charlotte now to take us through some tips from the PhD student experience.
Thanks for that, Katie. I was going to say actually my first tip, which is not actually on this just yet, but kind of building on actually what Katie was just saying about kind of project management and admin. I think one of the most important things to do quite early on in your PhD is work out how you're going to take notes and how you're going to record things. And that doesn't just mean for kind of supervisory meetings, because the My PGR system is really helpful for that, but also when you're reading literature. Over the course of your PhD, you will read quite likely massive amounts of literature. And if you don't kind of get a handle pretty quickly on how you're going to record all of that and be able to manage that, you might find yourself reading things unintentionally a couple of years down the line that you've already created notes for. So it's really helpful to quite early on work out if you're going to keep, for example, electronic notes. I had never kept electronic notes before I started my PhD, and I still prefer to take my notes by hand and then type them up. But it's a lot more helpful because then obviously you can use search functions and things like that to actually find keywords, and also things like if there's common abbreviations, you know, keeping a key of those somewhere, or if you kind of come up with your own abbreviations just to make things a little bit easier. And also if you're going to use any kind of color coding process. I use a color coding process with one color to indicate particular points that are of significant interest. I use another color to indicate that that paper is referenced in another paper and I need to go and track down that paper and see if it's any good. Things like that are really, really helpful to kind of start thinking about from quite early on, and they will help kind of with that project management aspect. So we've already talked a little bit about kind of meeting your supervisor and arranging your next meeting and how helpful and important that is to do kind of as early as possible, and being very clear in those kind of expectations. The next thing I would really kind of suggest is if you're in kind of maybe a cohort, or potentially if you're not in a cohort, but even if you're starting at the same time as other PhD students, making a point to meet other PhD students and other PGR students. So even if you're not actually in any kind of cohort and you're actually an independent student starting, making sure that you build connections with as many people as possible. And that doesn't necessarily just mean other students who are maybe at the start of their journey. That also includes students who are later on in their study, because that can be really, really helpful for you as you kind of progress throughout your PhD to actually be able to have the opportunity to speak with people who've already done some of those milestones. So for example, at the end of your first year, you do something called a probation. So for me, it was really helpful to have an opportunity to speak with other students in my in my college and in my department who already had experiences of undertaking probation, that I could ask lots of questions about their experiences and what that was like. And that helped me really feel like I was a lot better prepared for it. Also, top tip, researching your topic area and recently published papers in your topic area. Like I said, kind of working out your note-taking strategy, all of those kinds of literature-based things. And as Katie kind of said, at the beginning of your PhD journey, for the first couple of weeks, it might actually be quite literature-heavy whilst you kind of get to grips with your field and where your field is. And actually, regardless of what kind of the nature of your research is, obviously that's a really important kind of foundation for whatever it is you're going to go on to do. So potentially finding some review papers quite recently from your research area and reading those, and that will give you an idea of kind of maybe the history of your field and how things have kind of gotten to the point that they are. What are the current questions? How does that maybe fit in to the scope of your PhD? Are you looking to answer some of those questions that might exist in the field? Where does your PhD kind of fit within those review papers? And it's also a really great opportunity for you to also then track down some of the papers and some of the articles that are then cited in those review papers. So they can be a really good kind of jumping off point for you to actually start getting a bit of a feel for who are the players in your particular research field. There's also, I think, an incredibly important time to take opportunities to develop your skills and also your networking and presenting. So some of that is the opportunity to kind of undertake training. So as kind of Alex has mentioned and Katie have mentioned, training opportunities are offered through MyPGR. There might also be training opportunities offered within your college or within maybe a specific program if you are on a cohort program, or even just opportunities that you might find free accessible training actually outside of the scope of the university, and you can sign up for those. Those all kind of different options for you. And as well as that, like I said, kind of networking and presenting. If you have an opportunity to go to conferences, I would say that that is something that I've really taken a lot from during my PhD. It's given me an opportunity to go to places that I never thought I would ever go to. One of my favourite destinations that I've been to presenting at a conference was Washington, DC. So that was a really great opportunity. And it was also a good opportunity to build my kind of confidence and actually presenting my research at some of these kind of international conferences, but also an opportunity to kind of network and meet people. And occasionally you will find yourself at a conference talking with kind of some of these people that you see cited over and over and over again in your research. And I always find that a particularly inspiring opportunity to actually meet people that I've cited, half a dozen times in my own PhD, and actually have a chance to speak to them and ask myself, you wrote this paper on this topic, can you tell me more about it? So it's a really great opportunity. So a lot of what I've talked about so far has been quite work balanced, but I think it is also important to remember your work-life balance. So your PhD is obviously incredibly important, but try not to neglect kind of your personal life around that. And remember to take your annual leave, and don't feel guilty for taking your annual leave. Believe me, supervisors would much prefer you to take your annual leave and be well rested and be able to take a break and come back to things with a kind of clearer, fresher mind than have you run yourself into the ground. So yeah, don't feel like you can't take your annual leave, and that's actually something that I think is really kind of important to remember, that your annual leave is also really, really important. With that in mind, I think it's also important to reward small steps. I think the saying is that a PhD is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that definitely is something that it took me a while to get my head around when I first started my PhD, because everyone had told me that quote, but I don't think I really believed it. So I definitely went into my PhD feeling like, a couple of weeks had passed and I felt like I still had no idea really what I was doing with myself or what my PhD was going to be. And I feel like I didn't actually quite work out exactly what my PhD was going to look like until kind of towards the end of my first year. And then even that, obviously that kind of evolves over time as you conduct research and, you find out new results that indicate maybe, the avenue you were going down isn't actually going to tell you anything, or maybe actually it is going to tell you something really interesting, and you're going to refocus a lot more time and attention on a specific question that you thought maybe was only going to be dedicated for a couple of weeks. So with that in mind, I think it's really helpful to kind of reward small steps. So reward yourself for, having read 5 research papers, or, for having cleared your email inbox, because that is something that will always have more and more emails coming in, particularly the longer you're doing your PhD. So kind of small steps are definitely things to reward yourself with. And actually, it's not until you kind of look back at the end of a year, sometimes at the end of year review or your probation, that you actually really kind of actually understand quite how much work you have managed to do over the course of a year. And sometimes that can also depend on how regularly you meet with your supervisor. So that's something else that kind of is important to discuss in your first supervisory meeting, how often you're going to meet with your supervisor. So that could be weekly, it might be once a month. That might depend a lot on obviously kind of where in the stage of your PhD you're in, and also what the nature of your research is. For me, I kind of meet with my supervisor once a week, and that's tend to be something that I've started since I first started my PhD. And for me, I find that really useful to kind of check in every week, particularly if I'm having issues, maybe writing code to perform an analysis, and being able to say, you know, I'm really stuck on this. Can you give me any ideas? Or can I just have a second pair of eyes to see if I'm missing something? And I find that quite helpful, but I know other people that potentially go kind of 3-4 weeks between their PhD supervisory meetings, and that's obviously what suits them. So it is definitely kind of down to both kind of the schedule of yourself and your supervisor and your personal preferences. And also, if you have multiple supervisors, you might not actually meet them in the same meeting. So I actually have 3 different supervisors, and I think I've only ever had 2 meetings where all 3 of the supervisors were present at once. So I tend to meet them in kind of different separate meetings, because their kinds of different levels of knowledge and expertise covers different areas. So I tend to meet with them when I'm having a specific issue relating to that thing. But yeah, so again, that kind of coming back to actually determining that quite early on, and actually, you know, what that will look like when you're actually undertaking your PhD, and who to go to if you're having issues with certain things. And then kind of outside of kind of your work and also your work-life balance, I think it's also important to actually just explore the city of Leicester, especially if you've never lived here before. There's some really great restaurants, there's some really great kind of things to do in the city. And again, if you're looking to kind of rebuild that work-life balance, I think it's incredibly important to kind of make yourself familiar with the city and actually what's going on here. So that, you know, if you want to take a break and grab lunch with a friend, or, you know, grab dinner with a colleague, or go for a coffee somewhere maybe on London Road or Queen's Road, that you know where the best places are and where we'll offer you a student discount and how long it's going to take you to get there. Which means how long can you meet that person for coffee before you need to head back for your next meeting. And then kind of the last couple of things is that the university is also there for you. There's tons of free events that are put on by both the Students' Union and also other kind of PGR students. So there's also a lot of kind of support, which is offered again by the university, the doctoral college, and even kind of your supervisors. So if you're having any kinds of issues, your supervisors can actually be a really great point of call and a really kind of great opportunity for kind of support if you are having issues. And the very last thing to kind of mention is just that asking for help is okay. I think it ties back to that kind of PhD being a marathon. Sometimes it can feel a bit disheartening when, you know, you've, like I said, you've spent a month and it just feels like you're in the same place as you started. And I think that's another reason why it can be really helpful to write down the small things. You know, in that month, maybe you actually, you know, managed to write 1,000 words, or you managed to read 20 papers, or, you know, you actually helped yourself understand something that you didn't understand at the start of the month, and that might not feel necessarily like tangible progress. So with that in mind, I think it's important to know that actually asking for help is okay, and that it is really important to know that from quite early on in the PhD. But yeah, I think that's all my top tips.
Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you, Katie. So are there any questions from our audience? So if you do have questions and you're watching this as a recording, you can still chat with the team, including student representatives. So use the web link, which is le.ac.uk/study/chat. There are further events in the Succeed at Leicester. There's one coming up on Wednesday, the 11th of September, 11 till 12 in GMT+1, which is effective reading and note taking. And later that same day, 4 to 5 p.m. in GMT+1 time zone, is how to use the library as a distance learning student. More details on those courses and other courses can be found at le.ac.uk/study/succeed. For those of you that are arriving on the weekend of Friday the 20th to Friday the 21st of September, this is the recommended time for students to arrive, I believe, and it's open to all students. In Freeman's Common, there will be stands and stalls with information on student support, work, sports, and more. There will also be campus tours available and city tours to help you locate yourself within the city and understand your new environment. And there are lots of more events from Monday the 23rd of September as part of the Welcome Week activities. And a lot of these details can be found on le.ac.uk/study/welcome.